This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 435, UI Suite Initiative. This episode of Talking Drupal is sponsored by Hero Devs. On today's show, we're talking about the UI Suite Initiative, how it's helping Drupal, and how you might be able to help, with our guest, Pierre Dureau. We'll also cover Disclosure Menu as our module of the week. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Our guest today is Pierre Dureau. Pierre's been working with Drupal since the summer of 2006, with a focus on design systems since 2017. Recently moved to the WebAssembly world, but he's still involved with the Drupal community. Pierre, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm John Picozzi, Solutions Architect at EPAM, and today my co-host is Nick Laughlin, founder at Enlightened Development.
Good morning. I'm really excited about this topic, but I'm also excited for possibly a future discussion again on WebAssembly. But yeah, looking forward to hearing about the UI suite.
Before we jump into our primary topic, let's talk to our module of the week correspondent. We're going to bring in Chris Wells. Martin actually got delayed at the airport today, and we reached out to Chris, and he jumped right into the seat and is going to tell us about our module of the week. For those of you that don't know, Chris is the CTO at Redfin Solutions and a co-project lead for the Project Browser Strategic Initiative. Chris, tell us more about our module of the week.
Have you ever wanted a simple but accessible drop-down navigation on your Drupal website? There's a module for that. So the module is called Disclosure Menu, available at the usual place, drupal.org/project/disclosure_menu. So it was created just over a year ago in November of 2022 by Jay Huskins of Redfin Solutions. And there's a 2.1.5 version available right now, and that works with Drupal 9 and 10. It is actively maintained, and we had a recent commit within the last month. There is not currently test coverage. That's something that we obviously welcome any input on. And there is documentation in the readme.markdown file that comes with it. And I love that providing a readme means that there's documentation available on the GitLab source page for the module. And there's only 2 open issues, neither of which are bugs. There's about 30 sites using it, 29 as of today. And Jay Huskins from Redfin does continue to support the module. Probably the reason that there's not a lot of bugs or issues is that 29 usage number, and maybe that will change after some exposure today on Talking Drupal. So what this thing actually does is it uses WAI's pattern for an accessible menu using disclosure buttons. And it does that by just providing a menu block. Really, the history came from using Superfish in Drupal 7 sites for so long, but realizing that Superfish didn't have a lot of great accessibility to it. The whole idea of hovering doesn't exist on tablet or mobile, but doesn't exist for people who don't use a mouse or a pointer device. So they have a pattern, the WAI has a pattern, the Web Accessibility Initiative, I think that's right, has a pattern for markup for a menu with a button that lets you toggle it open and closed. For example, with Superfish, you would have to tab to that first one, but then you'd have to tab through all the children to get to the second one. So using this pattern is a lot more accessible for keyboard users. So when you activate that button, that's what toggles the visibility of those child items. And there's also ARIA labels that are provided that provide clarity around what those buttons do and what they're for. And in fact, this is very similar to the pattern that is used in Olivero, but a lot of the menu theming for Olivero was sort of baked into Olivero at the theme layer. So the advantage here is using that pattern with a module that can be installed on any site from Contrib, and then just being able to theme it through your regular theme.
So this sounds like it's the kind of thing that you would normally just do at the template level every time you build a theme, but now it's just a contrib module that just adds that, and then you just have to style it, right?
Exactly, yeah. It's just the way that nice menus used to work, or Superfish would work, where you can just provide a block. So the way you use it is you go to your block management page, you put it in your navigation region or your header region, you place that block there, and it's just styles from there. And there's a lot of good configuration too around how the JavaScript interacts with the buttons. So there's some tweaks there.
So this is going to be a dumb question. If we were to rename this module, could we rename it to like better accessible drop down menus? Is that kind of like what it gets out of the box?
I think that is a very good but much longer name. But that's really what it is, a better accessible drop down menu.
Cool. All right. So that makes a little bit more sense to me than disclosure menus. In disclosure is what, just to clarify, that's the kind of like ARIA attribute that's being used for these menu items. Is that fair to say?
It's really just the fact that there's a toggle that discloses the children. So it's almost like in the sense of an accordion, where you click the button and then you see the children. So when you are a keyboard user, are you trying to go to that top level menu item, or are you trying to see the children? So by exposing that as two different sort of intents, now the keyboard user is able to explicitly say what it is that they want to do. Whereas in Superfish, you'd tab to the first item and it would expose all the children automatically. Then you would have to tab through all the children before you get to the second one. So now you tab past the button, you tab to the next one.
And I assume this handles multiple levels? Like if you have tertiary or quaternary levels, you get buttons for each level?
Sorry, what was that? What was that last word there?
Quaternary.
That's what comes after tertiary. All right.
Yeah,
today I learned something.
Yeah, I know that 5 probably exists like quinternary or something, but I don't know. I've never had to go that deep in a menu.
I bet you it's quaternary.
Anyway, what was your question, Nick?
Does it support multiple levels? And it provides a disclosure button at the second level, third level if needed.
Awesome.
We don't recommend that you go to very deep levels, but yeah, it can be done.
I have one last question. Does it? So it says so you said it provides a menu block. I assume that means that it has all the default Drupal menu block things. Like if you want to only show the first 2 levels or only show level 2 past, like I imagine this handles that, or is this really just expecting it to be?
Is that core? Isn't that added by another module?
Oh wait, you might be right.
That's child menu module.
You're right.
Or actually, I think back in the day was called menu block module. So we're not providing a capital menu, capital B block. We're providing a lowercase menu block. And most of the configuration is specific to how you want the JavaScript to interact and that sort of thing. For example, you can actually hide the disclosure buttons unless someone is using a keyboard, so they show up only when you tab to it. That's one option that is kind of available, but generally not recommended, because you generally want to provide the same experience to folks, whether they're sighted or not, keyboard or not, whatever mechanism they happen to be using. But
all right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah, and we'd love to see people use it, check it out, and it's a great, that, especially being so involved in Project Browser Initiative, wanting to see more low-code, no-code solutions. If you want an accessible menu, download it and turn it on. Hopefully soon you can do that with Project Browser.
There you go. Cross promotion. I love it. Chris, thank you for joining us. Thank you for filling in this week on short notice. And if folks wanted to connect with you, how could they go about doing that?
Oh, find me on Mastodon on Drupal.community. I'm there as Chris from Redfin. I'm pretty much Chris from Redfin anywhere else, so feel free to find me there. But I think I do most of my Drupal chatting on Mastodon these days.
And there you go. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Yeah, thank you so much, y'all.
This episode of Talking Drupal is sponsored by Hero Devs. Let's talk about life after Drupal 7 end of life. Since August 2023, there has been a lot of discussion around Drupal 7's official end of life in January 2025. It's no secret that many companies, organizations, and individuals are still on Drupal 7 and have yet to migrate. I think we can all agree that migration, while beneficial, is not always feasible. This is where Hero Devs comes in. Hero Devs has partnered with core maintainers of Drupal 7 to build and maintain their Drupal 7 never-ending support product, ensuring the same quality of support you have come to expect over the years. Drupal 7 never-ending support, or NES, allows for an effortless transition, allowing your site to remain secure, compliant, and compatible after Drupal 7 goes end of life. This allows you to migrate on your own time, or potentially not at all. Hero Devs promises to keep Drupal 7 alive and well, even offering support for the current top 100 Drupal 7 modules. If you'd like to know more about Drupal 7 never-ending support, visit Hero Devs. That's HeroDevs.com. All right, let's jump into our primary topic. So we are here talking about the UI Suite initiative. Pierre, first and foremost, can you give us kind of the elevator pitch for the UI Suite initiative?
Yes. So if a front developer implement a design system into his Drupal theme, thanks to UI Suite, we are able to expose its works to the Drupal API to be used by back developers and C builders. So we have a bunch of modules. Every module is addressing one specific part of the design system, and is generating plugins who can be used by the developer and C builders. And each module can be used as standalone, but they work well together. That's why they make a suite of modules together.
And is that to develop a design system for a front-end site, so for an actual website to use, or is it to develop a design system to be used by an organization to be able to design other things like emails and other websites?
It's to implement an existing design system. Design systems, they can live in two different states. They can live as a specification only, where the reference is the work of the designer, or they can live in already existing implementation, but most of this time, this implementation is static, because if you go further, if you start to add templating and dynamic, you are picking a technology. So you are not building a design system anymore. You are building a Drupal implementation design system or React implementation design system. So we have two kinds of input. This is two kinds of design system, and we are helping teamers to implement design system into a Drupal theme with a bunch of tools. This is not the bigger part of what we provide. The bigger part is once the teamer has done that, we will be able to parse, to understand, to read, to process, and then to plug its work to the Drupal APIs.
I see. Okay. So you essentially are, translating the design system into kind of the living thing for your website to use. Basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. We are mostly generating plugins, configurable plugins to be used with config entities.
Got it.
I have to say, looking at your user profile, I got a couple comments. One is you maintain a lot of projects, which, like you said, you're maintaining a suite of modules, but I've never seen a user's projects maintain list have so many where they're all aligned. Like you have looks like 20 UI modules. It's just like
Yeah,
UI examples, UI.
because I'm not really the maintainer. I come from business side.
Okay.
For me, programming is hobby. And okay, now I'm changing my field and my work. But until recently, I was leading a 40 people team in a Drupal agency.
Okay.
25 developers, Drupal developers is this team. So I am a business guy, and with Michael, we are organizing the work. We are leading the community. So that's why you see me everywhere. That I'm a bit everywhere, but that doesn't mean I am the one doing the deep work on every module and team.
One other thing that I noticed on your project page is that you said that it's to implement the design systems while preserving and improving the Drupal site building experience. Can you talk a little bit about implementing it? Like, are you expecting front end developers to use these tools and configure them, or are these tools being installed by like a back end site builder, and then the front end developer just has access to the tools?
So we are not providing tools to the front developer. Front developer,
Okay.
we are adding a constraint, but we are asking him to do a bit more work. But it's a contract. That means he will get benefit from this work. We tell the front developer, when you do something in your theme, like Twig, CSS, JS, anything, you have to add a few YAML files because we need to know if your twig is a component twig. Right, it's a component. We need to know what is inside your component. I know you got Matu from SDC, so this is exactly the same as SDC, and we can talk about that later. But also, if you do CSS selectors and CSS properties, you have to tell us if it's a style utility, because in the system, there is not only the component library. The system has many other stuff, many other artifacts. So sometimes there's style utilities. So the front developer is already implementing the style, but he need to tell us, he need to add a YAML file describing, okay, now this is a style, and this is the option of the style. If he's adding CSS variable, custom properties, sometimes he's adding them because it's like refactoring his work, is helpful. Sometimes adding them because he wants to publish a public API for us to manipulate. So he need to tell us. So yes, so we tell the front developer, okay, we will give you a bit more work. You need to add YAML files. You are not adding in the normal Drupal theming. Yep. But if you do that, you are done. That means you don't need to do the theming of what the back developer and builder will produce, what of their work. You are now the provider of the design implementation. You do that, and then the other one, they will use your work, and you are done, and it's your scope, your ownership, and we will not bother you with Drupal stuff.
Okay. Interesting.
So I keep going back to like the end, not so much the end product, but what's ingesting this information, right? So is it essentially you're building you're building a Drupal front end, like a Drupal website, right? As your end product, or are you simply building an API for other assets to use? So for example, you have your design system, you build out your components and your styles and so on and so forth. And then a web app takes that information via the API and uses it on their, on their front end or their display, right? End user use case. And then same deal for like a mobile app, same deal for, maybe, I don't know, some sort of in product screen or display. Like, and then I'm not sure that I'm overly clear on this question, but like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, when you use this suite of modules with Drupal, is the end goal like a Drupal website that is using your design system to build a website for, you know, a marketing campaign, or is it APIs that other systems can use to ingest your design system and use your components?
So it's a Drupal solution only, because the main part of the UI Suite module is to parse, to understand the work of the front dev, and to plug this understanding to the Drupal API, mostly by generating configurable plugins. So it's very Drupal oriented. Okay, our goal, we have two systems here. We have a design system. It's organized. It's described. It's strong. And we have a content management system. It's Drupal, and we love Drupal, and it's powerful. Those two systems are not communicating most of the time. We make them communicate. We make Drupal be able to leverage what was implemented in the design system.
Got it. So then the output, right, the end user is seeing is components from the design system with, you know, whatever content the content creator wants them to have in it, right? So they're able to build pages out basically with that design system.
Exactly, yes. But the idea is to reuse it. You know, sometimes it's so easy to make back development reusable. If you put all your business related stuff, business constraint, business rules into the config with config entity, you are able to build business agnostic plugins, business agnostic PHP code. And that's why we have the country module. And so even in your custom module, you can build a set of modules you will use in many different projects for a client, for example. But for team, it's not that easy. Most of the time, you are doing the theming of this specific project. What design system is providing with the help of UI Suite is this same philosophy as a module. So you are building a business agnostic design implementation you are using in many different projects, because what the business part is in the config entities, not in your Drupal team code base.
So to step back for a second then, so you're saying design system, you have a well-described design system, but usually organizations have to be really large to have their own design system. So let's take a step back for a second. Will this help medium to smaller size companies? Because I'm looking at your UI suite. You have examples of, you have a material design 2 example. Does this system allow a medium-sized company to start with the material design 2 and then maybe tweak a couple colors and stuff, and maybe add a couple of styles, maybe a couple custom components, and have a good kind of base starting and layer on top of it? Or is this really meant for somebody that has their own custom design suite?
Okay, so there is many layers in your question. First, it's true we have public implementation. If you go to our project, we have Bootstrap 4 and 5, Material 2, soon Material 3. We have Mozilla Protocol. We have the French government design system, the US government design system. We have many implementation. Those implementation, it's only 2% of the UI Suite project as we know it, thanks to the stat from Drupal.org. Most of the UI Suite implementation are done for client in private project, for specific organization. Me is what I do. I started working with the UI Suite module 7 years ago. Before the word UI Suite existing, at the beginning there was no name for this. 7 years ago, and I did that for all my projects. But you're right, it's big client. It's big energy company, a big luxury company, big supply chain company. So it's big client. But what is important, it's design system. If you remove UI suite, some people say, I don't need a design system because I'm small or because I will use in only one project. I disagree. I disagree because I experienced that. I forced my team last 7 years to always go the design system way, even for single use. Because when the team is already comfortable with this methodology, it doesn't cost more. It's the same cost as a normal project. But once you have your design system, first you have a more peaceful relationship with the designers, and you have design input and design implementation where easier to implement, easier to maintain, easier to discuss about.
Okay.
So you save money and effort on the long run. And the day you will have a second project, your design is done. Easy.
Yeah, it's interesting, Pierre, because I feel the same way in working in small to medium sized agencies, and now working for a large global company. Right now my day to day is kind of taking a design system and building a Drupal platform with it, and applying that design system to multiple sites. So like a design system makes a lot of sense in that regard, because it keeps everybody organized and moving in the same direction. But even when working for smaller agencies and Drupal shops, I would often say like, hey, you know what, we need a design system here, or maybe even just like a component library of sorts, right? So maybe not a design system in the, hey, here are the fonts and colors and that sort of thing, but more so of like, here's how this component's going to work, right? And on every project, it works the same way, right? That's potentially, as you just said, could be a cost savings, or at least an effort savings for these companies when they go into a project, because a lot of times project A, project B, project C, they need kind of the same base set of components. And maybe you're customizing it a little bit on each project, but like if you can get 80% of the way there with your agency design system, right? And then build on top of that for that client, like,
yeah,
there's less of a learning curve for your team because they already understand it. And then also, you're able to move that much faster.
And you can go 100%. Because people are thinking design system are limiting. Like, okay, I have only 2 cars. I have only 10 colors in my palette. But the design system can be as wide as you want. Design system doesn't mean something compact and focused. What makes a design system? It's the organization and the cataloging. This is a design system. Mm-hmm. And you can have a very focused one, and you can have a wide one. And also you have mechanism for specific override. CSS variables, for example. CSS variables, where when they are known as a public API, they allowed to override a specific token of your design system. Mm-hmm. So I strongly believe, and it's what I did last year, then you can go 100% design system way and address a variety of projects.
So am I correct in understanding then that the UI Suite initiative as you said, requires a little bit more upfront on the kind of advanced site builder side to configure everything. But once that's configured, am I correct in saying that it moves a lot of the twig logic into config? So for example, I might have a component that's a card, right? And when I'm implementing that currently, I have to say create a paragraph and then create a display for that paragraph. And then in that twig, I have to say, okay, this field maps to this attribute or this section. Whereas with UI Suite, once everything's properly configured, when I'm creating that display, instead I'm saying use this component and mapping the fields to the attributes in the UI Suite plugin. Is that true? So it moves
Yes,
everything.
we move
well, not everything,
we move from twig to config. For example, SDC component. SDC component today. There is many initiatives, many modules who are starting to plug them to the Drupal API and to the C building, but it's not ready yet. So when you do SDC component, you need to go to your twig and to do the calls from the twig to the SDC component. So SDC component are bringing something very valuable. It's a game changer, in my opinion, but you still need to do this kind of glue from the twig. And if it's not enough, you go to the pre-process to finish the work. Not the pre-process of the component, of course, because there is no, but the pre-process of your twig template. So indeed, what a pattern, for example, is providing, a pattern is the component part of UI suite, is not only a component definition like SDC, it's also moving the logic to the config. But we are not inventing a new logic, because the plugins we are producing, layout plugins, blog plugins, field formatter plugins, view styles, view row plugins, they exist in Drupal core. The logic exists, the mechanism exists. UI suite is not providing anything new API. No, we are taking the design system implementation and we are plugging in existing Drupal API.
That's so powerful. So like one of the things, like for example, one of the things that you sometimes have to do is you need to get the actual URL of a file, of an image, right? Because you need to, it needs to be a background image, right? But it sounds like you can just use a field formatter to grab that and put it in, rather than like having to do the whole like, oh, is this a media entity? Let me dig in and get that. Like it makes it all happen at the field formatter level, which is
what you don't use anymore. It's node -- article -- teaser user -- these files are not existing anymore in the UI project.
Going off script a little bit here, then that sounds fantastic. But the one thing it sounds like it might take some getting used to too is how does it expose where the theme is coming from, for example? Because one advantage of the other process is if you inspect the page with your debug tools on, it will say, hey, this is the template that's being rendered right now. You go to that template, you might see that it's including something else, and you can kind of track it down that way. If you're using UI suite and you're trying to find out how something is being done, how do you does it output that debugging information the same way? Is it easy to track down?
As far as I know, my team is not using this debugging information with the twig verbose debugging, with commands. We are not using it. You don't have to think about that. You have to do your component. For example, we will talk a lot about component because first components have twig template, and also because it's the most important part of the design system. So you have to think about your component. You have to open an API for your component. What is my component is accepting, my slots, my props. You have to have your logic into your template, and then you don't really care about where the data is coming from, and you don't have to care. You are agnostic.
Okay.
So if you have a URL prop for this background image, if the URL prop is coming from a field formatter property, or is coming from a content entity link, or is coming from I don't know which back API you can leverage, it will not change the behavior of your component.
Okay.
So I'm wondering here, like, this sounds magical to me. And thinking of the kind of the work that I've been doing around design systems and implementing them in Drupal, this sounds quite lovely. I'm wondering, based on the the set of modules, the initiative itself, sounds like it's kind of like helping themers a little bit, but more so helping site builders, to easily be able to kind of implement the design systems. I'm wondering if you can kind of break down the level of effort, right, or the interaction between those different roles. Like how much work, how much of a percentage of the work is a themer doing versus a site builder versus like a back-end developer.
Okay, so let's start with the simpler, the back developer. We don't provide much to the back developer. We only provide the render element. And soon, because of SDC in core, we will just use the SDC render element. So we will not provide anything to the back developer. But the value is not what we provide, but what we remove. The back developer doesn't need to do the glue layer between his work, the seed builder work, and the front developer work. So we lower the expecting workload from the back developer, and he can focus on other tasks. He's a clear winner. For the tamer, as I told you, we are asking a bit more work, but he will benefit from a real ownership on the code base, a real product, I don't know, thinking as his implementation as a product, instead of just implementing something from taming something coming from other person.
Yeah? You'll also, the more times you implement this, you'll see kind of like increased gains in efficiency there, right? Because if you've implemented it once, like especially from like a themer point of view, if you've implemented it once, you may be able to reuse a lot of that work as you continue to reuse the design system, right?
Yes, and reuse and also improve. For example, if we do a design system for a client, and then it's used for the first project. Mm-hmm. So for the first project, the design system implementation with UI Suite will just be the front part of the project. Mm-hmm. It will be, we will have a front developer who will take him with us in the project, but instead of doing a classic taming work, we do the design system implementation. Then, for the second project, we don't have a front developer anymore. But we take the front developer first project and we promote it as a design system owner. Mm-hmm. It's your design system. You remember what you did for the first project? It's your design system implementation. Mm-hmm. So the new project say, I have a bug here, I have a performance issue there, and I need a new slot for my component, I need a new option for my style, and you need to fix the blue because it's not the corporate blue. Mm-hmm. So one project is asking all this stuff, and the front developer is doing that as the owner of an asset. Mm-hmm. And what he's doing will benefit to the two projects. Then the third project is coming, no front developer again in the team, but there's still the front developer or developers from the first project, and it continues like that. It's a product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I see like, your first go around, right, would be, 1% from a back end developer, maybe 25% from a front end, or maybe 50% from a front end developer, and 49%, I guess, from a site builder. But then after that, it kind of shifts, right, to like 0% back end, 25% front end, and then maybe 75% from a site builder perspective. That's interesting.
And the site builder, he has more work to do because everything is supposed to be done by site building. Right. So of course, his workload is increasing. But I don't think workload is an issue for the C builder. What is very annoying for C builder, it's when he's doing something on the back office and there is no the expecting result. Back office, sorry. In French, we say back office to say admin pages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was about to ask that.
Yeah. So
it's
that
very
harkened
confusing.
back to my commerce days because everybody uses the term back office when
because Drupal Commerce was made by a French team.
Yeah.
It's very weird because we use English word in the wrong way in the French language.
Well,
so every time I will say back office, I'm sorry about that. I'm talking about the admin pages. Okay.
Yeah.
I made that translation in my head already.
Okay.
It's
I did not, so I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah.
But that sounds fascinating though, because like many things, it sounds like what you're doing, the maintenance of the overall UI suite is more complex. So you need a more advanced, probably front-end developer, front-end themer to set it up and maintain that system. But
and a more advanced designer too.
Yeah,
we rely a lot on the maturity of designers.
But when you're actually building individual projects, you need a more advanced site builder too, but you're moving a lot of the workload to the site builder.
Yeah, you're moving faster, right?
You're moving way faster.
When I worked for a smaller agency, like the biggest problem that we had was front-end development and the fact that it took a large majority of the time and project for that front-end development, that theme development, right? So like this takes that, and provided you have an agency design system that you can apply to this, and you have a front-end development team, a design team, and a site building team that is all familiar with it, like you can start moving very quickly to completion at that point in time.
Well, people are also spending time and this is a generalization, but people are also focusing their time on the stuff that is frankly more interesting, I think, right? It means that the front-end themer or front-end design, like the designer is spending time solving the design for accessibility or solving the design for some interesting use case. The front-end developer might be focusing on making it more performant or, smaller or, more flashy. They're not spending their time building boilerplate to create yet another accordion.
Yeah.
For the 50th time.
Or even like, every project isn't the same. So maybe like they, instead of identifying like, oh, we got to build another accordion, or we got to build another drop-down menu, right? They're identifying, we need this new component. Okay, well, let's go in and build that new component, add it to the design system. And then like, you're improving the overall system and improving your ability to move faster on the next iteration, the next go around. So I want to jump into the naming, right? So if you look at, you look at the project page, it says UI Suite Initiative, and the word initiative has some weight here in the Drupal community. So when researching for the show, I went to the community initiatives page and looked to see if this was, a community initiative, and I didn't see it there. So wondering if this is just a naming of a project, or if there's some goal to kind of make this a community initiative in the formal sense in the future.
There is both. First, me personally, I don't use initiative. I say it's only UI Suite.
Okay.
But we create the project page, and this project page is not. We never host code. We just want the project page to publish, to exist in the Drupal namespace, and also to follow some issues on the project page. So we create this project page, and some members of the community were not very comfortable about having this project page, and they were afraid some people would expect some code. So they added initiative as a way of showing it's more like a group of people. It's more like a plan. It's not a project where will be a module sometime. But also, Yes, we plan to propose UI Suite as a community initiative this year. Maybe not UI Suite per se, but design system in Drupal or something like that.
Interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, sometimes the word initiative gets a bad rap because everybody assumes that there's some sort of, official movement behind it or something like that.
Yeah,
but
maybe I didn't think about that.
But I mean, I think the idea, like, to me, UI Suite seems to fit the bill, but I can see, like, kind of wanting to go in the route of, like, not, setting expectations of, like, hey, there isn't a large amount of code here. This is kind of like a grouping of modules that can kind of help you to achieve this goal, right?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And every module is independent from each other. I just precise that. You don't need to go the full UI Suite way.
Makes sense. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the more technical questions. Everything you've been saying so far sounds exciting, but as somebody who's worked in both design systems that are for one project and multiple projects, I'm curious how this handles updates. And specifically, I have questions about two pieces. One, how do you pull in upstream changes for a system? Like you said, say there's a bug in the accordions that you need to deploy to 10 different sites. How do you pull those in? And does it handle deprecations? Because you were talking about using CSS variables as kind of like a public API. But sometimes you also want to remove public API facing things, and you can't really do that without deprecating it. How does this handle those two situations?
So you talk about upstream. If you talk about upstream, that means it's not a design system which designed and implemented in the same project. So we have a few public implementation on the contrib space on the
Yep.
Bootstrap 4 and 5, Material 2 and 3, French government, US government, public implementation. Those public implementation are made to show the feature, to share the good practices, and also to test the feature we are actually developing. We are not expecting people to use those public implementations that much, but some of them are successful. So we are happy because they are becoming part of the reason why people are using UI Suite, and it's good news, but it was not the initial plan. So the difficulty about this public implementation is to follow the upstream, to follow the update, as you said. So what we do? First, we are using semantic versioning, and we follow the major release of the upstream. For example, for Bootstrap, we have only branch 4 and 5 for the upstream 4 and 5. For when we started the US WDS, we started directly at branch 3. So we follow this. That means when the upstream is also following the semantic versioning, we break the compatibility and move to the next major release, we will be able also to move the major release and to break the compatibility. This is for the upstream. Also, we can introduce a mistake in our implementation because it's way harder to do UI Suite implementation from upstream. We don't have control. We don't know what will be the next iteration of the markup. So every time there is a minor release, it's not a breaking major release for them, but maybe they do a little change on the static part, and for us, we need to translate the change in the twig part, and it's very hard. For now, we are kind of succeeding doing that, but it's hard. It's harder than a private project.
Yeah, that's why I asked that, because that's one of the hardest parts of maintaining a design system. And in fact, a lot of my agency clients that have a kind of a starter boilerplate design system, usually copy it for each project, right? And if there's something major breaking, they'll kind of manually backport that, unless there's no overrides, and they'll just copy it over. But they kind of handle that update on a per project basis. And it sounds like you're doing that as well. But because these are modules, I wonder if it's a little bit simpler because it's configuration, right? For the most part, like the actual mapping is configuration. So the
yeah. Okay, configuration. So as you know, from every part of the system, we are providing something, a plugin most of the time, configure plugin.
Yep.
And this configure plugin will be plugged in a config entity. And the configuration of the plugin will be attached to the configuration of the config entity on the YAML.
Yep.
That means the component, the styles, the grid and layout, everything, the set variable, they have a public API too. If they rename stuff, if they change the type of stuff, they can break the config which is already stored on the C building part. So indeed, there is a responsibility from the teamer when he's publishing a new artifact, for like, example, a new component, is also publishing a contract with the people who will use its work. We are giving them ownership and control, but also we are giving them responsibility. Now you are the provider. You have to act as a provider.
Yeah. And to be clear, these aren't always, from my perspective, feel free to correct me if you have a different perspective, but these aren't necessarily always easy decisions to make, and they're not always easy to maintain those responsibilities, or it's not always easy to maintain that contract. But I think when you're turning this into a system, it's important to have that layer always at the same place. Whereas on a normal, quote unquote, normal Drupal project, that contract really is on the front end theme part and in the twig files and in the .theme folder, .theme file, right? And you kind of have to, like, especially if you're inheriting a project, even if you're inheriting a project from the same agency, like you're a developer for an agency and you're inheriting a project from somebody else because responsibilities are shifting, you sometimes have to spend a lot of time going through .theme or .twigs and understanding how that system is built. But it sounds like you're moving that layer to one place, and there's a contract there, but it's consistent across every project, so you know where to look, you know where to see what's happening, which is valuable.
Yeah. Instead of talking about the little issue may happen, and you're right, it may happen. Let's talk about the big issue, the catastrophe. Okay.
Yeah.
There is one drawback on using US Suite. It's you are not able to switch theme anymore because everything you are putting into your config, it's dependent of what the front developer has provided.
Oh.
So if you start using your theme and you want to switch your front theme, you need to redo the display and the view display, the content entity display you did on the back, you did on the theme building part.
Yeah, but that's common, right? When you're using a design system, like you're not necessarily, you know, if you think about a design system from like it's I don't know, it's nuts and bolts, right? It's a common system used by all the sites. So like one site isn't going to like change the theme or move away from the design system because that kind of negates all the benefits of having a design system, right? So like, I think like something that I've found is like when working with a design system, when working with, you know, like sites or sites that are, you know, within one client's control, right? That, you know, you need to have a good governance around how how people are using that design system and what, what's controlled by the design system versus what's customizable at an individual level. So I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I think we may have missed something. So correct me if I'm wrong, Pierre, but I think what Pierre's saying regarding the theme is that right now, if you change themes, like if we have one theme and we're getting ready to start a new theme, a redesign of a site, you're going to have to reconfigure the block pages because blocks are tied to the theme.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to, tweak the templates a little bit, but that obviously and do the new theme, but that's it. With UI Suite, when you're changing themes, you'll have to go in and change every single display. You're gonna have to change probably most views. You're probably gonna have the view displays. You're gonna have to change the blocks, and you're not gonna have to change the theme, the twig files, because those are being pulled in from UI Suite. So there's a lot more site building changes that you have to make when you're changing the theme, and you have to import config probably. So it's probably a lot more complex.
There is always a provider and user. So in the normal workflow, not normal, but the legacy workflow of Drupal theming, when the back developer and the C builder are changing stuff, it can break what the front developer did. Mm-hmm. If you rename a bundle of a content entity, if you remove a field, you are breaking the twig template related to this config entity. Mm-hmm. Us, with UI Suite, we reverse the workflow. So now the front developer is the provider. So we didn't remove this issue. We kept this issue, but we switched the responsibilities.
Yeah. Which I think would take some getting used to, but I don't think it's necessarily more work or less work. It's just like with a lot of things, it's moving the work to somewhere else. So if you're used to a legacy Drupal theming process, it's something to be aware of.
I mean, I think one thing this highlights for me, and is another area where projects can kind of slow down, and take this with a grain of salt, but the code review process, the theme review process, right? Reviewing template files, reviewing CSS updates, reviewing all that stuff, like that can take time. So being able to kind of like move some of that stuff into config and into config updates and things like that. I mean, I guess you're doing code review there anyway, but it feels like it might be a little bit more structured and a little bit easier than potentially, having to do it at the theme layer.
Well,
indeed, it's more solid and more future-proof.
I think the difference too is many times when you're implementing a design system as a front-end themer and you're doing the code review, you're essentially reviewing code that's already been reviewed as part of the design system, right? You're just making, because they're essentially re-implementing it.
Right. Whereas, I mean, you might change something though, right? So like maybe that first commit, you're re-reviewing that code, or maybe you don't have to review the code at all because it's that initial commit. But I think like if you change something, you would have to review that.
But review are different.
Yeah.
So when you're implementing design system, with whatever tool you decide to use, it's not only a UI Suite issue, you are able to review your front code without the context of the project, without the context of the business usage and constraints. So you can do your front, do the review, do the iteration, and be in a comfortable situation before it's used by the project and the developer.
It's more generalized in the fact that you don't have to worry about the specifics of the implementation. You can just worry about like basically the functionality of it. It brings me to another question around single directory components. And I'm wondering if UI Suite works with single directory components.
Not yet, but we are planning to do. SEC for us, it's a dream coming true. And it's like a miracle. It came so fast because first time Matthew told me about SEC, he told me, hey, I'm targeting Drupal 10.1, and I didn't believe that. How can you be that fast? And it did. It's really it's impressive. So component is not the only part of the design system, but it's the most important. It's the one, when you think about the system, you think about cards, button, you think about component first, and then all the other artifacts are coming after. So having a component, UI component API into Drupal core, for me, it's the biggest event since a long time ago in Drupal. It's huge.
Sure.
So SEC, yes, we first, before SEC was merged into Drupal 10.1, we worked with Matthew and Mike, and there was some adaptation done to SEC to make sure SEC will benefit from the years working, the experience of UI pattern. Also, I am one of the two guys who tag the SEC issue as reviewed by the community. I did the functional status change, and someone else did the technical status change. And now we are ready to ship. Not ready. We are starting the work on UI pattern 2.
Okay.
And UI pattern 2 will be based on SDC because, UI pattern, the magic of UI pattern is not the component definition. Component definition is not the value of this module.
Okay.
And for us, it's a bit a burden to keep it, to maintain it. It's complex. It's heavy. So thanks to SDC, we remove this part of our scope. We use SEC and we love SEC, so it's very good news. And we are focusing on the value. That means connecting those SEC components with the Drupal API.
Okay.
So yeah, we will release UI pattern Alpha 1 soon, in a few weeks. And I really hope UI pattern 2 will happen this summer.
Cool.
Very good. So I see that you have monthly meetings on your YouTube channel for this project. Are those meetings still going on, and can people join those?
Yes, it's been 2 years. We are doing that. We are between 10 and 20 people every month. It's sometimes half an hour, sometimes 1 hour. And it's important moment for us because, as I told you already, our modules are very independent from each other. They all address a specific artifact of the design system, and they work well together, but they don't need each other. So there is some people who worked on many of these modules, but some people, they only focus on one of these modules. So it's very good that once a month, we are all together and we share. It's like a daily, but in a monthly. What I did, what I'm planning to do, and we need to share the big picture too. So it's interesting.
So, other than the monthly meetings, how can somebody else get involved with the UI Suite initiative? Is there a Slack channel or something like that?
There is a Slack channel. We are not very active on the component channel, even if it was created, I think, by a guy from UI pattern a long time ago. But now we have our own channel because we discuss about design system in general. So we have the channel for this. It's UI-suite-initiative, the channel. So anybody can join. There is 150 people here. We also welcome contributors and anybody who want to create or address an issue. We have around 80 active contributors now. So it's a big family. Contributor for me is someone who did one commit the last 2 years. That's why I call active. So it's 80 people. And also in every European meeting, like the camp, the con, the dev days. We are doing a contribution corner, contribution table, where people can join. And also, and this is a sweet part, every year we organize a seaside camp.
Oh, okay.
We will organize the third one this summer. We are between 5 and 10 people, and it's a moment to work in a nice environment.
Where is that located?
In French Basque Country, Biarritz.
Man, that sounds awful. I'll have to see if I can make it out that way.
So
French seaside. That sounds lovely.
It's a lovely city, very beautiful.
So is there a roadmap for a UI Suite initiative? Because you mentioned that you're looking at getting 2x out, you're looking at getting SDCs implemented. Like, is there like a global cross-module roadmap that you have somewhere?
Every module has its own roadmap, but indeed, we have UI Pattern 2. UI Pattern 2 is one of the 2 big projects of the year, but UI Pattern 2 is not only SDC. We address 3 issues. UI Pattern 1 is old, it's 7 years old. So we need to rebuild upon SDC.
Yeah.
That's the first. We need to consolidate the ecosystem because today there is like 10 or 15 modules in Drupal Contrib about UI pattern. Because there was a lot of energy a few years ago and everybody was doing this stuff. But now, thanks to the monthly meeting, we all talk and we know we can consolidate it for UI pattern 2. So we'll have a simpler offer for the users.
Okay.
And third, in UI pattern 1, we have a different mechanism if we want to plug a prop and we plug a slot to the Drupal API. And every mechanism has its pros and cons, and it can be very limiting. Every time someone is complaining to me, is because it's a limit related to the 2 mechanisms. So UI pattern 2 will merge, and it will be the same mechanism for slot and props, and we will solve a lot of usability issues. This is UI pattern 2. Very exciting. And second project, it's an artifact of the system we are not addressing yet. Is the last big artifact which is missing from our scope is icons and icon set. So we will maybe create a new module, maybe find a module in the country space. For example, there is a module called icon set who looks 90% like what we want to do. So we will just promote it and use it if it's validated. But we want to address this important part of the system we are not addressing yet, the icons.
Okay.
So in closing here, I'm wondering if we see UI Suite moving into Drupal core in the future. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So you know why it's called UI Suite? It's an homage as Display Suite. Display Suite is, I'm doing Drupal since 18 years. So I was here for the glory days of Display Suite. And Display Suite was really ahead of its time. And now it's like a empty shell because all the good ideas went to Drupal core, and that's nice. And I would like to see UI Suite disappearing, vanishing into Drupal core. When SDC arrived, it's a part of the UI pattern API, something similar, of course, so who went to the core. And it's not UI pattern itself, but I don't care about UI pattern. I don't care about UI Suite. I just want the features to go with the part. So now we have SDC. It's wonderful. So what would be the next step? 2 proposals. First, to take some seed building feature of UI pattern 2 into Drupal core. So first, we need to ship UI pattern 2 and then talk with the core contributor and again with Matthew and Mike. Okay, is it something you want to take inspiration from?
Yeah.
And maybe slowly UI pattern 2 will decrease, you know.
Yeah.
And second, I would love to have a style API in Drupal core, like SDC for component, you know.
Yeah.
If we have a style API where you can have your style guide, manage your option and option strategy, and you can apply style to any display. It would be for me the next step. Components is only the first step. The system or more than component.
Yeah, I mean that right there is exciting to me. Not even like, even if you scaled that way back and just made it so you could set CSS variables in a contextual way, would solve a lot of these issues.
You know, you got excited about that, Nick, and so did I, because the project I'm working on now is like we're exporting our own styles out of Drupal. So like if there was a built-in API to already do that, like it'd be very nice. It'd be very nice to be able to do that.
And just to conclude,
sure.
this discussion, for me, the ultimate goal of all this is not the code. It's not the tool, it's a process. I strongly believe the inversion of workflow we talked before, then Tamer need to be the owner and the provider is the way to go. And all these tools inside Drupal core or inside UI suite or anywhere in Contrib, for me, it just is not the goal. It's the way, the path to achieve the goal of having a business agnostic, reusable, structured design implementation.
Makes sense. I think we're going to leave it there for today, but Pierre, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. And this was super interesting.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So do you have questions or feedback? You can reach out to Talking Drupal on Twitter with the handle Talking Drupal, or by email with show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with our hosts and other listeners on Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel.
You can promote your Drupal community event on Talking Drupal. Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/tdpromo.
And you can get the Talking Drupal newsletter to learn more about our guest host, show news, upcoming shows, and much more. Sign up for the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
Thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and clicking that Become a Patron button in the sidebar. Alrighty. Pierre, if folks wanted to get in contact with you, talk about UI Suite and other things, how would they go about doing that?
They can, in the formal way, they can create an issue on our UI Suite project page. In a more casual way, they can join us in the Slack UI Suite Initiative channel.
Perfect. We'll put a link to the Slack in the show notes so for anybody that's listening. Nick Laughlin, what about you?
You can find me pretty much everywhere at Nixman, NICXVAN.
And I'm John Picozzi. You can find me on all the major social networks at John Picozzi, and you can find out more about EPAM at epam.com.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking. See you guys next week.
Thanks a lot, everyone.